This is the final session of the day, and this one is it's a big topic.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what happened is we got this group together, and I'm going to introduce you guys in just a minute here. And we had a round robin discussion earlier, and the question was, what's next? What is our industry going to look like? What got us here will not get us there. What does there look like? And 45 minutes went like that. We wish we would have recorded it, and as Fred said, we should have just done that and gone out for a beer. I think it's a fair question. That might have been Paul. But anyway, so here's the scoop. Representing programming and audience, listener, viewer behavior is Fred Jacobs, Jacobs Media. For those of you who are not familiar with Fred, he is an innovator, a programmer, the inventor of the classic rock format. I always like to throw that one in. And would you like to just say a couple quick words?
Oh, me? Sure. Yeah. Well, we have been consultants and researchers for a long, long time, but really the goal of all of that speed was to really think about how can we actually be on the leading edge of where the industry is going. And so thought leadership is very important to us, and we've been involved with a lot of interesting projects over the decades, and I'm sure some of them will come up in conversation, but I'm just very honored to be here today, as I know so is Paul.
Very good.
Hey, Speed, before you keep going, Brian, can we put the text line up? We're going to get this up. So here's the place. Text us your questions,
Yep.
Your thoughts, your comments for these guys, because if you've ever wanted to ask them a question, here's your chance. And so at that point,
so Fred's representing programming, the audience, the listener. All right, so now we're going to go to Paul Jacobs, Jacobs Media. Yes, they're related, and sales and revenue. He's going to talk about the strategy side, the seller capabilities, monetization, remaining relevant. There's a lot of stuff there. And Paul, would you like to say a couple words as well?
Sure. Thanks for giving me such an easy to digest topic. It's interesting. Sales has always kind of had the image of, every day is kind of the same. You go out and make calls and everything else. I know programming has changed, right, Fred? Sales is changing so much. And what I see is there are some sales teams and leaders that are changing along with it and leaning in. But there remain a lot of people who aren't. And so hopefully today we can talk about how to help and, motivate folks to really jump on board, because there's so many great opportunities ahead. And, let's go at it.
Fantastic. And our third panelist, last but not least, is Jim Brown from Borrell and Associates. And Jim is going to be the advertiser's point of view, because at the end of the day, their opinion matters. So what we're looking at from that perspective is Borrell is just a master in terms of SMB or small business expectations. They do surveys continuously on what are their attitudes, where are they headed. And Jim, let's say a couple words to the gang.
Yeah, thanks again. I'm really happy to be here. Glad to be talking with Paul and Fred. We did have a great conversation the other day. For those of you who don't know, Borrell is a research company. As you said, we focus very much on what the local businesses are thinking, what they're doing, what's working, what's not, what their wishes are. And a lot of that comes out of a survey that we do. But we also work with a lot of quantitative data too, to see the size of the market and how things are changing. And at the core of our business, is we've been in business now 25 years this April, is focused on helping local media companies help their customers be successful. And they can't do that unless they adapt to the changing environment. So we really focus very heavily on that.
So now you know the players. These are the folks. And we've got some questions to get things started. And I know Brian's going to have some stuff. You want to kick it off?
We've got a poll question we're going to put up here in just a little bit. But guys, so we hear across the industry, so many people say, where's this going? What can we expect? What's this going to look like? The way I liken it to folks when I'm out is, say, our toes are kind of on the ledge. And we've got to this point, and we're trying to figure out what's this bridge look like to get us to the other side. So Fred, we'll kick it to you and start out. Just what are some of the changes with listeners and viewers that you see coming, that honestly, it's to the point now we just can't really ignore it any longer?
Well, if you have somehow said in the past, that old famous slogan, "May you live in interesting times," You're probably ruining that day at this point because these are, in fact, very interesting times. We really don't know where we're headed, and that great unknown, I think, is part of what frustrates people, especially if you've been in the business for a long time, because there were so many years of consistency where the technology really didn't change, and the overall flow of how you got ratings and how you generated sales was pretty static for the most part. It was really more a matter of boning up your skills and working harder and all of that. Now all bets are off, and we're really kind of going into this just trying to figure out, where the signposts are. I kind of look at what is happening from the content side, from the standpoint where the audience really at this point doesn't really care what device they're listening on. In radio we do. We want people to listen on radios. It's easier to monetize those numbers than it is streaming numbers. But the audience is pretty much at this point device and platform agnostic. They just want to make sure they can get the content as seamless as possible in whatever environment they happen to be in. And a lot of the groundwork for all of this was kind of, happening during COVID when people found themselves trapped in their homes, maybe without a radio, or maybe if there was a radio, it was up on the nightstand on the second floor. And all of a sudden, here they are going, wait a minute, how do I listen to my favorite radio station? And that's really where a lot of people learned how to download mobile apps and how to stream and how to talk to Alexa and do all of those kind of things. And I think part of the interesting aspect of that is that the older audience that we sometimes, misjudge as being Luddites or just not being particularly tech savvy, they all learned how to do all these things as well. And we see in the research that we do, the older audience to a great degree has caught up and has some proficiency with all these devices. So it kind of comes down to radio broadcasters making sure, it's a cliche phrase, but it's a cliche because it's true, meet the audience where they are and make sure that wherever the audience happens to be, whatever devices they have in front of them, we've got to give them a great experience here. It's not just about making sure the transmitter works. We've got to make sure the stream sounds great, that the app functions properly, that we're sending out the right notifications, all that stuff. And there's a lot of mistakes being made out there today, guys.
And Fred, I think in many cases we're needing to do all that with fewer people at times.
Well, exactly right. And again, the old margins that I think we all got kind of fat and comfortable with don't exist anymore either. And so a lot of this kind of comes down to we need to be committed, and we need to be committed to listener first. It's not about us anymore. It may have been at one time, but it's really about the consumer. And when you look at the totally successful companies out there, the Amazons, the Apples, I mean, to a great degree, that's a big part of how they innovated. They studied what the consumer needed and what the consumer experience was like, and they programmed to that. And we need to do a lot more of that as an industry. And you're right, with budgets being what they are, fewer staffers, all that, it's a tough putt.
By the way, to capitalize on that, this morning I texted Fred at 6 a.m. I received a push message on my iPhone from a radio station promoting their Christmas music.
Oh, gee.
Ouch.
Yeah, congratulations. The push notification program worked.
It works, yeah.
Yeah, somebody was asleep at the switch with the content piece. Right.
Yep.
I would love to hear from, Paul, how's that side of the desk responding to what's going on air and what our listeners and our viewers want from us? And then I'd love to hear from Jim just to say, okay, hey, here's the word from Main Street USA. This is what they're looking for, if you wouldn't mind.
Some have shifted, and as I said earlier, more need to. I mean, look, radio's value remains, top of the funnel, great branding, huge cume. The problem is the value of that to advertisers, as Jim knows, is not as big as it used to. And this is why dollars have shifted to digital. Part of the problem, I see this all the time. Too many radio sellers think they're selling radio. at a time when more and more dollars are shifting to digital. And as a result, when I start a sales meeting, I always ask, how many of you want to make more money this year than last year? And they all raise their hands. And I'm like, great, stop selling radio. And that doesn't mean stop selling radio. It means stop relying only on radio, as your growth thing. Um, People ask me, digital is competitive. How does radio separate itself from all the digital platforms and competitors out there? Well, the value, if radio stations do this right, is in being locally based, is being that local trusted expert. Anybody can provide SEO, but if they know a human, like a radio sales rep who's good, it's really good. Maybe they select a digital provider because they understand their business or they have a broad sense of the media landscape out there. Maybe because the radio station can provide other solutions like events. When I started selling radio, I had two things to sell: 60-second commercials and remotes. That was it. I would love to be a radio seller today. And, my hope and wish for the folks who are watching this and for all the salespeople I deal with is that they embrace this opportunity and don't run from it, because there's actually more money to be made today for a radio salesperson by stopping just focusing on radio and tapping into the client's total budget. So that's the value prop. And I think the big barrier is between the ears.
And by the way, it's radio and the visual, the television folks out there as well.
Yeah.
We're watching everywhere. We're consuming more video than we ever have before, not necessarily in the living room.
And as you can tell, Fred and I have radio in our DNA.
Well, so do I. But
We're always going to
I
default to that.
That's okay.
Jim.
Well, I have ink in my veins. My background was working in the newspaper business for 20 years, but I've been with Borrell now the last 15 or so. And, when we were having this conversation a couple of days ago, we sort of were framing it with what's next, right? And, I think there's a lot of reasons to Paul's point to be optimistic. But if I just thought about my business as being a radio company or a television company, I'm not sure I would be all that optimistic, right? I think there's a point at which sort of hiding or trying to pretend that some of the systemic things that are happening in the industry aren't happening, not a good idea, because it's just it's going to create blinders and blind spots. But if you step back and you think, well, what are all the opportunities, to Paul's point, to serve people? There's more opportunities now than ever before. So, what's next? I made this comment when we were chatting the other day that there's exactly 0 data points about the future. We don't know.
So true, though.
Yeah, right. Fair enough.
We're research guys, though. And, I think some things you can predict and you can see where things are going, where the disruption is. And if you sort of define yourself differently, if you define yourself as a business that is in the business of helping other local businesses be successful, well, that's great. That's a huge opportunity, right? So I think a lot of this is to Paul's point about being between the ears. How do you think about it? How do you frame the world? And I think there's a lot to be optimistic about when you frame it that way.
Okay, so Brian, that was the perfect transition for Jim. And as we were talking about this the other day, in this, we said, you know what? And Jim's the one that brought it up the other day. We need a poll question that says this.
There we go.
Are you optimistic about the future? So we would like for you've been participating in this throughout the day. We'll do it again tomorrow, but we want to hear from you, and then we'll expand off of this. But how optimistic are you?
I mean,
guys, we got about a 30-second lag here before the votes start coming in. But I think it gives us a great talking point moving forward about how do we feel? And,
We'll see it right there.
I wonder, unsure what the future holds, certainly out of the gate. I think is interesting that may garner a lot of the support, a lot of the votes here today. That I think when we look at this, can't be everybody, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say, come on.
Yeah,
I will say this while we're sort of letting people make their votes. If you look at science fiction, and a A lot of the
There we go.
movies that are out, a lot of
Little bit of a
books that
lag. Here
we've
we go.
seen, they can be really negative, right? They're sort of dystopian, but really, there's a lot to be excited about if you think about the innovations and you step back and go, wow, think about things what we can do, today that we couldn't do just 10 years ago,
We
let
talked
alone
about this morning. We said there are more options, more opportunities for our customers to deliver the message to their customers than there has ever been in human history. Now that's on one side freaks you out, but on the other, that's exciting as heck. I mean, I agree. I wish I had this many opportunities when I first started selling,
You
because we
know,
are now selling solutions.
So,
I think there's two types of people and two types of organizations, those that let it happen and those that make it happen. And I think you need to look at yourself and look at your organization through that lens. Nobody knows what the future is going to hold. Jim, said it. There's no data point, but can you carve out your own future? Can you develop a strategy that is focused but agile? But recognize, take the information that you have at your disposal. And Lord knows there's enough research out there and prognosticators like Fred and me and everybody else out there, and just start making it happen. And that to me is the first step that radio and TV stations need to make. Uh, and then continue to course correct, continue to do research and everything else. But if you're laying back and just letting it happen,
well,
yeah.
so our top two categories there, pretty unsure about the future led, and then it was cautiously optimistic.
Right. That's your two people.
And discouraged was I guess the lowest percentage. So I'm glad to see that. But Jim, listen, you kind of brought that up. Your thoughts when you look at the results of that poll?
Yeah. Look, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about. And okay, this might sound trite, but I believe the future belongs to people who are optimistic. Right? When JFK stood up and said, "We are going to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade," that was an impossibility in a lot of ways, but it was aspirational and he believed and we did it, right? So I think you could say same thing for Jeff Bezos, right? When he started that little company out of his garage, right? Who knew what it was going to be? But he believed in what he could do and he made it happen. So the more we have that belief, the better. I would say ground it in a couple of things. One is, Fred talked about it, the audience. Ground it in the audience. What are they doing? What are their changes? What are their behavioral changes? And how do you meet those? And then your customers, how are they changing? And how are their customers changing? If you get grounded in those two things, it's exciting because you think, oh, there's all kinds of new ways we can start helping these people with whatever the needs are that they have today, including, hey, I need to be optimistic. Help me figure out what the next path is. A lot of them are looking for leadership there.
Let me pull out one of my favorite quotes from Henry Ford that goes to this. If you don't know exactly where you're going, how will you know when you get there?
Right. Yeah.
That's the truth.
I do think, though, that clearly radio people over the past couple of decades have put the blinders on to a great degree about a lot of the change, either hoped that it would go away or kind of said, we're not going to get really involved or committed here until we know this is the real deal. And I think moving forward, it will really be beneficial to be both intellectually and culturally curious about what is going on out there. Now, Paul and I are a little tainted at the moment. We just got home from CES a couple of weeks ago. So we spent 3 days running around Las Vegas trying to figure out what the future was. So great, you invited us to the right panel here. Of course, the fact is we don't really know. As Jim said, there aren't any data points on the future, but you can clearly see trends in the making. AI, of course, being one of them. And a lot of people look at AI and either freak out or go into denial or are convinced they're going to lose their jobs. And that's not the way to look at this future. You've got to embrace it and you've got to study it and you've got to understand it and figure out how you can make it work for you. And I think that's where the winners are going to come in to all of this, whether we're talking broadcasting winners or really any other kind of business here that hopes to be successful 5 or 10 years from now.
Hey, Fred, I'm curious, who's more tainted, you or
Fred.
Paul?
Oh, well, there's no question. I mean, I'm glass half empty. He's glass half full. It's always been that way. I mean, some people don't know, but he and I worked at the same radio station. I was the program director and he was on the sales team. So you can only imagine what
I
fun
can
that
imagine.
was. Oh, yeah.
Guys, it's interesting when you think about that in that poll that was up and why some people are optimistic, some people not so much. A lot of people are concerned. I think it's because of the way human beings process things. We're very linear. It's just the way our humanity is, right? We can think about things based on the past. That's really all we have to relate to. And transformation and technology isn't linear. It isn't about making things better or faster or more efficient. It's about transformation. And so you kind of have to change your frame of reference and think about how is our industry being transformed? Not how do we do more with less? How do I start using AI to be more efficient in my radio stations? Not that that's not good. You should do those things, sure. But that would be missing the mark because the transformations that are going to happen in terms of consumer behavior, how businesses operate, the problems they're going to be solving, new problems that are being created, ones that are being solved forever, that's going to change our world so much that if you can just sort of reorient yourself around that, it's exciting. It's really
interesting
exciting.
because you're exactly right. We're linear by nature, and we fear change. We hate change. We've talked about this in earlier sessions today. Unless there's something out there that prods us along. So all we've had in the past 10 years is a worldwide pandemic and AI that is, basically either going to just take over the world and we would become its slaves or vice versa. There's a lot going on right now, mixing and matching in our heads. I mean, how does that affect everything right now from your perspective?
Well, I would say from my perspective, leadership, more than anything else, good, solid leadership is so important right now. And I do think you need to be optimistic, but what are people looking for? They're looking for how you and your company are going to transform themselves, how you're going to help them, how you're going to maintain relevance. Young people getting in this industry need to feel like there's a future in the industry. So I think leadership is so important here, and it can't be overestimated. I think if we step back again and look at the changes that are happening in consumer behavior as a result of technology, there are lots of opportunities. And I don't want to jump to too many conclusions here, but if I were sort of thinking about, all right, if I owned a television station today in a market, or if I was the owner of a radio group, where could I see myself being especially relevant, not just marginally relevant, but especially relevant in the future? It would be helping the local businesses navigate all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting you become a new business incubator, but you could be a facilitator of that, right? Think of all the assets that a television station or a radio station has. Number one, you got a lot of talent. You're a communications company. I sure hope you are. That's really important in transformation. You probably have a building. You probably got some office space. You're probably a connector in your community. All those things are fundamentally, foundational to starting a business. And I think if you get focused only on your current customers, you don't think about all the new customers that are going to be created. Think about new businesses that are starting that you can jump on the bandwagon and help. Hell, you might even invest in them, but at least start helping them. So think about, where do they gather today? Because I hear this from salespeople. Where do I call on these new businesses? There are more new businesses being created right now than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
Well, where are they? Where do you find them?
Well,
That's one of the places salespeople need to focus their attention.
The glass half empty is that, look at all the businesses that closed in COVID. The full is, look at all of the new ones that have opened.
That have replaced.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly the case. It's that optimism versus pessimism. Things will change. Businesses will close. They always do. New businesses will come. They always do. Where are we going to be? That's the big dang question.
But the structural gap from the sales perspective is sellers look at that new business and go, I want to sell them radio. As opposed to How can I help them build their business and what
Yep.
tools? I mean, what Jim just said was beautiful. I mean, when you look at all of the skills and expertise and tools and everything else that a local broadcaster has, if we just walk in with radio, that becomes an easy no, and it's a no that's expanding. But if we come in with hi, we know how to help businesses grow. Well, you're going to get that meeting. And then if
Mm.
you, so, and that's the gap that we've got to close. At least I'm just talking sales on the sales team.
Hey, before we throw it, a question to Fred, Paul, talk real quickly about broadcast and digital, because we mentioned earlier it was almost like there was a separation between the two. And moving forward, it's got to be part of the overall recommendation and what we say to our clients. I'll tell you, the thing that I'm using more and more lately that I say is listen, broadcast will make you a star and digital will make you unavoidable. What business doesn't want that brand, that recall? And then let's use the digital to make you unavoidable. And it's a powerful combination that all too often it feels like we still want to separate the two.
Well, because too many businesses and radio stations and TV stations are not immune, work in silos, and they think of themselves in a lane. There's radio, there's TV, there's all these other things. I love what Jim said about management. And I'm a manager. I mean, that's, what I do. And too many managers are managing by spreadsheet and history, and not by strategy and vision. I mean, we work with a lot of organizations, and the ones where management is committed to stretching the way people think and challenging the way people think, investing in training to get them beyond that, are the ones that are having the most success. But it's really hard. I was with a radio sales rep a few months ago. She's a veteran. She's been doing it a long time, pretty successful, large market. And we were talking about programmatic and digital. And she turned to us and said, I don't want to bring this to my clients.
And
we hear that a
why?
lot.
And
Yeah.
Paul, and why?
Well, I think what she said, the why and what the real why were very different.
Yeah.
Okay. What she said was, I know my clients and I know they don't want it. I think the real reason was she's scared to death
Yeah.
and might be at the point in her career where she doesn't want to take on something new.
Knowledge
And
gap.
yeah, and look, I don't want to be, and then you have management that's afraid to turn those people out because, wow, they've got great relationships with the media buyers. Well, that is a declining business. And so, we need managers who have the vision to repopulate with people who think differently.
Fred, I'd like to throw you you've always looked to the future, and you're a broadcaster, but is there becoming a world now that we have to become narrowcasters? That we all live in news deserts now. I mean, you can find out what's going on 24/7, the flavor that you want to view or watch that matches your viewpoint. But who's playing in the local game? Who's running for re-election? What's the big parade coming up this weekend? It's not there, except for broadcast fulfills that. We are still that eyes, ears, voice in the communities. Can we lean into that? Is that something we need to be doing?
Well, Speed, I think we need to adjust our focus. I mean, most radio people, and especially TV people, and I've worked for both, have done a good job focusing on the narrow competition in their market. The other 2 TV stations or the other 4 radio stations that are kind of in my way, ratings wise and sales wise. And what we stress to our clients is you got to pull back. And you have to look at the strategic challenge now, not in competing against other radio stations, but really competing against everybody. What is it that makes you different and better and more unique and more local than Spotify or Sirius XM or some podcaster who may be a wonderful podcaster but has absolutely no connection at all to your city, your hometown, what's going on. So I think radio people need to adjust the focus of their competitive energies. And I think the other side of its speed is innovation needs to be stressed, and it needs to come from the top. I mean, when I was in radio as an employee, we were pushed all the time to come up with new stuff. What's new? What are you guys going to do? What's going to be different this year as opposed to what you were doing last year? And right now, unfortunately, I think we're more in the zone of just keep it on the air. Let's just do the best we can in this quarter right now and hope for the best. And ultimately, that might win the quarter, maybe, but it's certainly not going to win the year or win the future. And that's one of the biggest concerns I have, is that innovation is just not being stressed all the way from the corner office.
Hey, Jim, let's talk about the consumer again here for a bit. Looking down the road, consumer habits, the way the consumer buys. What do broadcasters and media companies need to know about what we can expect down the road from the consumer?
Well, it's already starting to happen, but if you haven't heard of agentic AI, start putting that on your radar, because agentic AI is different than, I asked ChatGPT a question and it answers it, or, I have a dialogue with it. Agentic AI is, think of it as being an assistant, something that can make a decision on your behalf, calculating all kinds of data. So if I used insurance for an example, I really don't care to spend a lot of time analyzing all the possible insurance options. But agentic AI can do it for me. It knows who I am. It knows the size of my house. It knows when it was constructed, what kind of roof I have. It knows that my neighborhood, how far the fire department away is. It knows what my risk is. It can evaluate, and there are already companies doing this, new companies that are evaluating insurance and taking out the brand, right? So think about all the brand advertising that exists today on radio and TV. There's a lot of it, right? Think about insurance again, the Geico Gecko. All those ads do very little to persuade an AI agent to make a decision. In fact, zero. They don't help. So I think in the future, those things are going to be a lot less relevant, at least insofar as AI is helping you make a choice. But here's what still matters. People will still give it guardrails. I'm not going to let it pick an insurance company. I have no idea who they are or anything about it. Am I really going to trust that? I'm going to trust a company that I've heard of, that I've become aware of. Where am I going to become aware of it? Probably through local media. That's something I know and I can trust, and I'm grounded in. So I think that's going to be a really important thing to think about, how consumers start making choices differently. And now, how do you help advertisers in that new environment? There are certain categories for which this is really, really important, like legal services, right? I don't need one until I need one. But when I do, boy, I hope I know who they are I should be talking to, right? I can't think of anybody can do that better today, or even in the near future, than local media companies can. So there's a lot to be optimistic about, but you have to be grounded in the changes that are coming that are going to disrupt that. And you will see new players emerge who are not playing that brand game, but maybe are playing the trust game and are playing the, hey, we're going to have the best possible rate, taking out all the inefficiencies that exist in our marketplace, taking out any of that static or friction. So I do think that's a big piece of how I'd be thinking about the consumer side and the businesses.
So localism, I mean, we certainly, we got off on localism the other day. Paul, localism, what's more important in the future than localism?
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, obviously having a whole bunch of stuff to sell, but at the end of the day, radio without local personalities is called Spotify.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But on the other side, from the Fred side, programming side, we're doing less and less on a local basis.
That needs to
voice
stop.
tracking. Yeah.
It's clearly a mistake, and I know there are a lot of people out there. I mean, look, we work for syndicated shows as well, and really good ones are just fantastic and can fit in every market. But ultimately, being a great hometown personality and an ambassador and all of that is something that, to a great degree, only local media, local broadcasters can really pull off to any degree. And I think that eye contact is so important. People want to meet personalities. They want to be able to actually connect with personalities. And what's interesting is our research shows the younger you are, the more you actually feel that need for connection. And I think, without getting hypercultural here and, taking this conversation down the rabbit hole, I do think there are a lot of people who are lonely, who are not particularly connected in their lives. And so having somebody who is a friend on the air, Bob Pittman has talked about that for years, the companionship aspect of radio. I think when you actually swing that over into the local side, that becomes real. Now, keep in mind, by the way, that one of the promises of AI, there's agentic, as Jim talked about. There's also AI as a companion. And to a great degree, that is where that technology is moving. And radio people need to be aware that that is, in fact, one of the byproducts, if you will, of where AI can go. It's really an interesting set of circumstances.
See, Fred, you mentioned Alexa earlier. I thought she was just mine, and now it feels like she's cheating on me with
cheating on you.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one too.
So Fred, with what you just said, and you guys, and we got a final question as we kind of start to wrap this up. But Fred, what you just said was that young people crave the local connection more. Does that not go against a lot of the social norms that we think, that local people are just tied to their phones and they're not really looking for that local connectivity?
Again, I think you have a sense of hometown pride, no matter who you are, whether you are young or you are retired. I think what happens on your main street is really important. I think to a great degree, COVID crystallized a lot of that for people. I mean, yes, part of the COVID story, of course, was international and for sure national. But at the end of the day, COVID was really about what was happening in your community. What was your school board doing? Where could you get a vaccine? Can I go into that restaurant without a mask? I mean, these are all local issues. And I think the radio stations that really served their communities well during COVID spoke to that particular need. And I think for a lot of consumers, that has become more of a pronounced desire over time. So I think that's a great opportunity for radio. But as you say, so many radio stations have been leaning against that from an economy of scale point of view and maybe really missing the mark.
And if I could just layer a final thought to that, Fred and I have seen this in the research we've done for several years, kind of burbling up and are still seeing that. And that is this tug between authenticity and algorithm. And we hear young people talking about that, a craving for authentic voices. That becomes, another opportunity for us to, so yeah, local is the place, but authentic is the texture.
The ideal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jim, any thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, it's trust. I think it's trust. It comes down to trust, and trust is born from experiences, and I think authentic experiences. There's no substitute for that, and being in your community is really vital as far as that goes.
Yeah, you can't fake it.
Yeah, you can.
No, but what's interesting is how indelibly important it is. I mean, I've moderated more radio focus groups than anybody alive. And you talk to respondents in these focus groups, and they will tell you in living color about an incident they had where they met a radio personality back in 1994. and they will be able to go through it line by line, whether it was a wonderful experience, and you hope it would be, or maybe not such a great brush with fame. But these things matter to people. Radio people have the ability to be able to make someone's day and elevate them and make them feel better and make them feel validated. But again, I think we have to be sensitive to that and understand that our role maybe has changed.
All right, we threw this one at you last time, and it's back. And the question is, all right, 5 years from now, all right, that can be flexible, 5 to 10-ish, okay? But 5 years from now, what does success look like if we get it right? What happens if we miss the mark? And I'm adding one more element to keep this upbeat, is what can we be doing right now to make sure that we get it right? Anybody want to?
Who wants it?
Yeah, who wants it first?
Okay, I'll start with a really short answer.
Ooh.
Success looks like ratings are not the most important metric.
Okay.
Okay, that we're not driving all our efforts just to radio listening. And that's not a Nielsen shot, but it's understanding that content creation and all the work we're doing covers a much broader array of scores. And so, yeah, to me, that's what success looks like in 5 years. Yeah.
And Paul, interestingly enough, we've got hundreds and hundreds of questions that have come in from people who are attending over today and tomorrow. It's amazing on the sales side how many questions revolve around ratings and agencies and how do I handle it moving forward. So hearing you say that, it's right in line. People are wondering, and I love hearing you say moving forward, not going to be where we start, right?
That's right. Okay, I'll stop there and let the other guys chime in.
Basically, though, what do we need to be doing before you get off it? What do you need to do right now to start moving in the right direction?
Reimagine what we are and what we do. Reimagine our why, that we are no longer just in the radio business, but we're in the solutions business for our advertisers. And for our listeners, as Fred said, we are creating content that is unique to our brand and our locality that people can access everywhere.
Fair. Who's next?
I'll go.
Fred? Yeah.
I'll go. So, without sounding too gauzy here, I would be satisfied 5 years from now if radio in particular, and again, I bleed radio, so it's going to be through that lens, but if radio were still relevant, if radio was still part of the conversation of what is going on in the community. If radio isn't relevant 5 years from now, that's really a bad thing. I mean, radio just becomes yet another mundane service that you dive into and you leave. And ultimately, what is it about radio that makes it better than all of these other options anyway? I can have every single song ever recorded on this device without commercials, thank you very much, or personalities or any of that. So to me, it is ultimately about, is radio still relevant in local markets, in local communities? Does radio still matter? And I think if the answer is yes, we're going to be okay. It might be an augmented reality from where we are today. I mean, the metrics are always going to change, but to me, local relevance is really the litmus test here for radio.
So what do we need to be doing right now to make sure that we still own that piece of the mind?
So we really need to connect with listeners. Again, I talked about focus groups a few moments ago. Broadcasters could learn so much by just quietly sitting in a room and listening to the audience talk about the experience of entertaining and informing themselves. They don't know what they don't know. And you're not going to learn this from a rating book. Again, I'm not trashing Nielsen either, but the metrics there are what the metrics are. They're not particularly informative. They don't go into the why behind what people do. So I'm about not necessarily with research, but really dialing into the audience, to listeners, and listening to what they're doing and what they want.
Jim?
All right, ask me the question again. Frame it. Ask me the question again.
It's
I wanna
true
hear
or
you-
false.
Can you repeat the question? Yeah.
All right. 5 years from now, I'll give you a few extra years if you need it. But they didn't. They went with it. 5 years from now, what does success look like if we get it right?
Yeah.
What happens if we miss the mark? And what do we need to be doing right now to make sure that we get it right?
Okay. I'm going to start with what happens if we miss the mark. We look an awful lot like we do right now. We're still trying to survive. If we get it right, I think local media companies, and I would say this across the board, broadcast for sure, newspapers, lots of local media entities, if they get it right, they'll be growing again. They'll be thriving, but not in the way that probably people think of today, like, well, we sell advertising. Instead, I think if we get it right, our industry will be transformed around this notion that we're connectors and that our fundamental job is not to inform the populace or entertain them. Important, sure, but there's so many ways to do that. Instead, our job is going to be drive commerce in our local communities. We're going to help people be successful. We're going to help local businesses compete. And we're going to do that in a variety of ways. And if we do that, I think we're going to be successful in the next 5 years.
Okay, final thought from each one of you on this question. Paul, we'll start with you. Tell me why you're optimistic moving forward.
Because I think radio's got the bones to build on if it chooses to do so.
Okay. Fred, why are you optimistic moving forward?
Radio still works. I mean, it is amazing, but radio still draws an audience, shapes a brand, can be that call to action. So I know I sound like a sales guy right now, but I think all those things are in place. I think if radio plays to its strengths, personalities, local communities, it's got a really good shot of getting through this. And look, not every broadcaster or station is going to figure it out. I mean, there's always a pecking order of who gets it and who's kind of wandering around in a maze. But I think there clearly will be broadcasters at the top of the pyramid who are going to figure this thing out. And in some cases already have. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there are some local companies out there that really are doing a great job by paying attention to the fundamentals that we've talked about today.
Yeah, I just want to add for our TV folks out there, I think the recipe's the same.
It is.
Remember the local roots. And yeah.
Jim, what are you optimistic about moving forward?
Yeah, I'm optimistic about a lot. And the last is the thing that Fred just mentioned. It's the people. You know, I think that, okay, this is called rising above, right?
Yes.
And I think rising above really means choosing how you lead while the ground's still moving beneath you. And so there's a lot of really talented people. There's some very smart business people who will figure this out. I'm very optimistic about that. I think it'll look very different. But if we define our jobs really clearly as leaders in this industry, we understand that our job is going to be one of inspiration. We got to inspire people and keep them focused and moving forward. And I think there's great opportunities for that. I really do.
Gentlemen, you're the best. Look forward to seeing you on the road very soon. I know we will. And final thoughts, Speed?
I appreciate all of you. I've been in this industry for the better part of 5 decades now, and I'm not the only one on this call, and I've seen a lot. And the fact that you 3 see our future, it ain't going to be easy. We have to realign. We have to reinvent to remain relevant. But who hasn't? It's been that way since we opened up our doors over 100 years ago. I'm optimistic as well. I'm bullish as hell on broadcast media, local, because of the local aspect. The thing that scares me is if somebody decides it's easier and cheaper not to be local, that frightens me. So I appreciate you guys being here. It was awesome.
Guys,
Hey,
Thanks
pleasure.
for having
Thanks.
us.
It's an honor. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
for
Hey,
inviting me.
Jacobs Media, Borrell and Associates, leaders in our industry. We appreciate you guys. Look forward to talking to you soon.